In one of the biggest developments in the history of this country, Donald Trump has now been indicted in the Department of Justice's case into Trump's efforts to steal the 2020 election and the events surrounding the January 6th insurrection. This is now the third indictment for Donald Trump, who's also facing 34 felony counts in the Manhattan DA case and 37 charges in the DOJ's other case regarding the theft of classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump is the first former president in American history to have been indicted even once, much less 3 times as is the case now. We won't know the precise charges against Trump until his arraignment, but reporting references 3 criminal statutes as part of this case, 2 of which were also referred by the January 6th committee: conspiracy to defraud the government and obstruction of an official proceeding. But the third is a new one, Section 241 of Title 18, making it a crime to conspire to injure, oppress, threaten, or intimidate any person in the free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to him by the Constitution or laws of the United States. A 241 conspiracy charge is generally used in voting fraud conspiracies, which would apply here given Trump's whole effort to discard hundreds of thousands, if not millions of votes for Joe Biden while attempting to pressure officials into anointing him the winner of an election that he lost. You'll of course remember Trump's efforts to pressure Brad Raffensperger to find 11,780 non-existent votes in Georgia, exactly 1 more vote than he lost by in that state. There was also Trump's efforts to pressure Arizona Governor Doug Ducey, who we just found out has been cooperating with federal prosecutors against Donald Trump. Trump had summoned a raft of state legislators to the White House. We know of a number of slates of false electors in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And of course, Michigan District Attorney Dana Nessel has just indicted 16 of them in Michigan. There was the Texas lawsuit seeking to invalidate the election results in 4 other states, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. An argument could be made that any number of those examples could qualify as a violation of Section 241. Of course, these statutes aren't guarantees of the charges against him, but they offer some insight into how prosecutors in the DOJ have likely built their case against Donald Trump. Another major element of this case will be the avalanche of testimony compiled both from DOJ interviews and testimony from the January 6th committee, primarily from Republicans and Trump officials. I know that our collective memory is short these days, but here's a quick reminder of some of the testimony revealed by the January 6th committee that unto itself already presents a pretty insurmountable hurdle for Trump's defense.
Mr. Cipollone said, "We're going to get charged with every crime imaginable."
I did not agree with the idea of saying the election was stolen and putting out this stuff, which I told the president was bull.
Are you out of your effing mind?
It was not true.
He's become detached from reality.
What they were proposing, I thought was nuts.
Mark said something to the effect of, "Things might get real bad."
I overheard the president say something to the effect of, I don't effing care that they have weapons. They're not here to hurt me. Let my people in.
And again, these were not the rabid leftists that Republicans complain about. These were lifelong Republican officials: Bill Barr, Cassidy Hutchinson, Eric Hirschman. And that's just the people we know about publicly. So no, this isn't some left-wing witch hunt against Donald Trump. It is a legitimate indictment buttressed by the people closest to him. Now, this indictment comes in the aftermath of more than 1,000 participants in the events of January 6th having been charged. Nearly half of them have been sentenced, with prison sentences ranging from 7 days to 10 years. I spoke with former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirshner about what a potential Trump prison sentence would look like if he's ultimately convicted in this indictment, and here's what he had to say.
Yeah, there's really no normal when it comes to, in the event a former president of the United States is convicted on these counts or similar counts, how long might he spend in prison? But if we look at the statutory penalties, I think they're instructive. So a conspiracy, pretty much any conspiracy, including a conspiracy to commit offenses against or defraud the United States, carries a 5-year penalty, whereas obstructing an official proceeding, right, trying to stop the certification of Joe Biden's win, carries up to 20 years in prison. So I think the takeaway, Brian, is that regardless of, how many offenses of conviction Donald Trump ends up with on his criminal resume, he's going to be sentenced to something that is a de facto life term, given his age, and assuming a judge actually sentences him to prison, to incarceration, rather than something like home confinement.
And granted, that is a million steps from where we are today, but it underscores the seriousness of the crimes that Donald Trump's committed and the charges that he'll likely be facing. And let's be clear, the fact that Donald Trump's fate is still in question is already evidence of a system that has bent over backwards to defer to him. If it was any other person who committed the crimes that Trump committed, they'd already know their bunkmate's life story. They'd already have forgotten what the sky looks like. They would already be confined to a concrete cell with no chance of ever seeing the outside again. So when Trump cries victim and presents himself as some kind of a martyr here, just remember, he is doing so while enjoying the perks and carve-outs that quite literally no other human on the face of the earth would enjoy. Trump isn't a victim here, he is an elite con man who used public pressure in his position of power to insulate himself from well-deserved accountability, until today. Now, I should note that one act for which Trump will likely be charged by Jack Smith is the phone call to Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, which of course overlaps with the Fulton County District Attorney case over the same phone call. I discussed the implications of Trump being indicted in two separate jurisdictions for the same crime with Glenn, and here's what he had to say.
Often when somebody commits a crime, it can violate both state law and federal law, and I'm pleased to report Donald Trump has done precisely that. With that corrupt ask, right, just find me 11,780 votes and corruptly declare me the winner, he not only violated Georgia state law for soliciting election fraud, but he also violated any number of federal laws. And in preparation for this discussion, Brian, I printed one of those federal laws out. A person who, in any election for federal office, knowingly and willfully deprives, defrauds, or attempts to deprive or defraud the residents of a state of a fair and impartially conducted election process by false, fictitious, or fraudulent tabulation of ballots commits a 5-year federal felony. That is precisely what Donald Trump did on that corrupt phone call. So he could easily be charged with a criminal violation of that statute and, frankly, plenty others, because I think the big ticket crime that we're going to see indicted against Donald Trump and others for this whole scheme to try to corruptly overturn the 2020 presidential election results is going to be a conspiracy to commit crimes against or defraud the United States. I predict that's going to be the umbrella charge, and then a whole lot of more specific federal statutes will be indicted because he violated any number of federal election laws.
Now, there is one more point besides the legal stuff and the technical stuff. Let's not forget that this indictment is in response to Trump orchestrating and inciting one of the most treasonous acts in the history of this country. For the first time ever, an American president refused to honor the peaceful transfer of power. And not only that, he was so hell-bent on refusing that transfer of power that he incited an insurrection against his own government to prevent the process from happening. If Trump didn't get indicted for these crimes, it would have completely decimated faith in our justice system. So not only should this move by the DOJ be warranted, it was an absolute necessity. The fact is that if Donald Trump isn't held accountable now, it'll not only serve as license for him to do it again, but every other Republican who views himself or herself in the mold of Donald Trump. There has to be strong action to disincentivize this type of behavior. And in fact, without it, it's effectively an invitation to keep employing the same tactics. The criminal justice system has an obligation to prevent this from happening again, and the only way that happens is if strong action is taken. This is not about Donald Trump's policies, insofar as he had any policies. This is not about his piss-poor character or his insecurity or his narcissism. This is about his decision to undermine a free and fair election to remain in power, and his decision to incite an insurrection in order to do so. No one made him do it. This isn't about the Democrats or Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton or the deep state or Hunter Biden or Barack Obama. This is about Donald Trump choosing to commit a crime for which he's now being indicted. So while the meltdowns and temper tantrums are inevitable, just remember that no one made him do what he did. He can cast blame every which way, and he will, but only one person is responsible, and that's the person who's just been indicted by the Department of Justice today. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.